Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 179. I always giggle when I announce the number because I just can't believe it's still going after 4.5 years. And we've got to our 179th edition and we're in kind of arm's length, metaphorically, of the 200th episode. So episode 179. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. Or if you're watching this on Facebook and you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. Those are the two ways or the two platforms you can watch these podcasts. Okay, I say this every week as well, but I'm going to say it again because I love saying it. One of the things I like doing about this podcast is I get to virtually travel all over the world to meet a fantastic range of guests. And this week it's time to go back to Britain. We are back in the UK. I have to go home at some point. I'm delighted to welcome our guest this week. It's Govinda Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, nice to see you, Narada Prabhu.
It's great to have you with us. Now, I've probably we've known each other in this life for well over 10 years. I'd say 13, 14 years, possibly. And yeah, whenever I think of ISKCON in the UK or the Hare Krishna in the UK, I always think of you. You know, because you're such an active part of it. And in a moment, we're going to find out why. Okay, so Govinda, let's start with the first question. It's the first question that every guest gets just to warm them up. That's if you need warming up. Please tell us a little bit about you and where you are from.
Well, I'm originally from Edinburgh, and I went to university, graduated from mathematics. But on that journey, I had a sort of crisis of existence, if you like. And I was a spiritual seeker. I didn't really understand what spirituality was, but I was curious and I was suffering about the purpose of life. So at the age of around 19, that's when I started meeting devotees in Edinburgh. And it's interesting. If you ever heard devotees say you need a devotee association, it's very true. Because in my case, there were many book distributors in Edinburgh, and I had about 14 books before I ever actually went to a Hare Krishna meeting. And I never thought to join the Hare Krishnas. I never actually considered myself, I'm a Hare Krishna. I just thought, these are amazing books. And I didn't even know that there was a temple somewhere and that there was even the possibility of Hare Krishna's meeting. I just sort of thought, these are interesting books. And I read them, kind of thought they were true, but never actually thought, I am a Hare Krishna. Until I was invited to a Nam Hat in Edinburgh. And after about 3 meetings, I kind of felt, oh, I'm a Hare Krishna. So it's amazing how if you read the books, you don't necessarily practice. People used to wonder, for about 3 years, I was reading Hare Krishna books and I never practiced anything. I didn't even know about japa beads. I was reading the books. They're very philosophical. You don't find the word japa beads mentioned usually. So it never actually dawned on me that it's something I could actually practice until I actually met devotees, and then they kind of steered me in the right direction. So yeah, it's amazing how the books alone was not enough for me to actually actively become a Hare Krishna.
Mm. You mentioned that you were going through, well, I think you said you were going through things in your life or you were questioning things in your life.
Yeah.
Without going into all the details, unless you want to, what were you questioning and why were you searching for something?
Um, okay, at university, first year university, students are wild, right? So I started smoking some substance, right? Marijuana. I was always interested in, well, not always. Let's just say I was very interested in science at school, but then for some reason I just became interested in Eastern religion. I guess I kind of opened up my, I wouldn't call it, I wasn't into psychedelic. Only a bit of marijuana I smoked a little bit, but it was enough to sort of like awaken some kind of search within me. And that's when I even found a Bhagavad Gita that wasn't Prabhupada's. And I just felt very, I went through this period of I was just feeling ecstasy about life. And it's just, I was exploring. And for some reason, actually, the reason, part of the reason I got this really mood for about several months. I actually got glandular fever. And if one of the symptoms is it can make you very high. So I became sort of, I was feeling like I was going beyond duality. It's just kind of this kind of vague spiritual concept I had. But I lost it and I became like kind of depressed and I was trying to get it back. So I would do things like I would read books from the library about Buddhism and yoga and I would try austerities. For example, I took my mattress off and I just sort of I'll sleep on a hard, hard floor kind of thing. And I tried fasting and I was trying to get back that experience I had when I was kind of like I was just high. It wasn't even that experience at the time. It wasn't like I was on some kind of drug or anything, but it was just like I think it was the effect of the glandular fever. Plus, if you work very hard and I wasn't sleeping enough, and so I was kind of in a state where I was a little bit wild, a bit kind of like a nutty student kind of person. But I was seeking, in the stream of Bhagavatam, there's a statement like, if you get a moment, it's kind of a moment of realization, it can set your path for life. And kind of, so I got this kind of moment where I was thinking, this is something amazing. I felt bliss. I didn't know what it was, and I was seeking it. And that's why I was kind of on this search. And I wasn't feeling happy with, I was good at mathematics, good at university, but I wasn't feeling happy. I didn't know the purpose of life. And I just was looking for something deeper, basically. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Also, I just want to say that it was almost as if you sounded a bit guilty about smoking marijuana.
Well,
And I was kind of thinking to myself, I mean, marijuana these days, I think most people would accept it probably should be legalized anyway. But that's a side note.
yeah,
I thought you were going to say something more terrible, you know.
no, no. Yeah, I was interested. First few times I took it was kind of interesting. It was kind of positive, but then it kind of wore off. After that, it became like you lose your energy, and it didn't have any
Mm.
positive effects in the end. So it was a
You
dead
said
end,
some
thankfully.
you Thank you for that. You said something else. Sorry to cut you off, but you said something else
Oh,
just now that literally three or four other people have said to me over the last 3 weeks. You said something about you collected like 14 books and you were kind of reading for a period of time before you met devotees or joined the movement. And I've heard that quite a bit recently. People were like reading books from their homes for a long period of time before actually joining.
mm.
So what was it, or what is it about Krishna consciousness that appeals to you? I mean, how did it 30 odd years ago appeal to you in that way?
It's really the question. The answer to that is really it's about faith, right? So at the time, I was reading a handful of books. I was very interested in Buddhism, and I went to some meetings, and I was reading Hare Krishna books. I think what changed it for me was the nature of Prabhupada's books were slightly different. It's like they were telling me to do something, they were talking to me. Prabhupada's very forceful. The other books, they were like, it felt like they were conveying information, but they weren't taking me on a path. And so there was something very direct about Prabhupada's books. I mean, I remember one time I was sitting in a bar in Edinburgh and I was smoking a cigarette, drinking some alcohol, and I was reading Prabhupada's books in this smoke-filled pub, basically bar. And then it was saying you shouldn't eat meat, take intoxication, illicit sex, etc. And I thought, I'm going to stop eating meat just because this book tells me to. And so I just then and then, I stopped eating meat. I carried on eating fish for about another year, but I just stopped eating meat. So the books were telling me to do something. So I think Prabhupada he captured me. I was there to be captured by anyone, but he was proactive through his books in capturing me. So I was thinking, I went to the Buddhist meetings. I was thinking, I'm going to leave a Hare Krishna book at this Buddhist meeting because I felt inside that these Buddhists, they don't know this higher truth that Prabhupada's giving. And I converted basically without really meeting a Hare Krishna or having a proper conversation with a Hare Krishna, a few brief conversations on the street. So I kind of philosophically accepted it before I even began practicing and chanting Hare Krishna. It's just the
Mm.
power of Prabhupada's books. He grabbed me.
He grabbed
Yeah,
me. I like that. I like that. And then you met devotees on the streets in Edinburgh, and you eventually went to a Namahata meeting.
yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, and then how you kind of got involved with the movement.
Okay. Here's an interesting. I had this experience when was going to the meetings. I was thinking, I like these people, but I'm not one of them. I'm just coming to see what they're doing. And then when they would bow down and they do the Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, so on, and I would just watch them do it. After the third meeting, a force like entered me and I started bowing down. I didn't decide to do that. I was never thinking I'm going to actually become one of these people. But I just kind of bowed down and it was like it happened automatically. I didn't make a decision to do it. And that's kind of when I did that, that's kind of when I started kind of joining, so to speak. And at the time I had the round the world trip and I was going to go round the world trip with my girlfriend at the time. And we split up, but I decided I'm going to go anyway. She didn't use her ticket. And one of the stops was India. So one of the members of the Nam Hat said to me, "Oh, you're going to India. You should go to this place called Brindavan." So a few months later, I traveled and I went to Brindavan, and that's when I started chanting 4 rounds. Imagine that I'm going to Brindavan, and I was smoking a bidi from India. The bidi, they're horrible things. I was going to get a cough and everything, but anyway, that was where I was at. I wasn't following the four regular principles. I was still drinking alcohol, and I went to Brindavan. And here's a funny thing: Krishna tested me before I went to Vrindavan because I was in Mathura, and then there was some English young guy about my age, and obviously I didn't know at the time, but obviously he was into drugs of some sort because the night before I went to Vrindavan, he'd put a pill on my pillow, and I thought to myself, "Oh, this is a pill. I wonder what this pill is." It was like a temptation. Maybe it's some kind of psychedelic pill or whatever. And I decided I'm not taking this pill and I'm just going to Brindavan. I don't want to be part of this I don't want to be around this guy. So I went, that was like a final test. And so I passed this test. It was like, so I went to Brindavan and then I met some devotees who I later became friends with. And that was after Brindavan, I ended up joining in New Zealand full time. And that was another
Wow.
interesting thing. What happened was I ran out of money. I actually got conned when I was in India. There was some jewels thing. They said to me, if you buy these jewels, you can take you'll get your money back in Australia, blah, blah, blah. And I fell for it. So I ran out of money. So when I was in New Zealand, in Auckland, I was invited back to the temple and I said, I thought to myself, I'm going to go for 3 weeks or a couple of weeks and I'll save some money. But when I joined, I ended up canceled my round the world trip and I just I'm just doing this permanently. So that's when I just became a full-time devotee. Going to
Wow.
Mangalar every day. It was nice, you know.
Wow. You see, one of the things I love about doing these podcasts, even with people that I've known for a long time, is that I'm learning so much about you. You know, I kind of knew that you, or I assumed that you joined in Scotland. And for all the time I've known you, you've been around the Bhaktivedanta Manor, kind of northwest London, Hertfordshire community, whatever. And all of a sudden you tell me you joined in New Zealand. I wasn't expecting that. Um, okay. But then at some point you came back to the UK, you know, and you got quite involved with the movement. You took initiation. Do you want to talk a bit about that and how that kind of happened for you?
Okay, yeah. So I'll tell you what happened next. Because of visa issues, I would hop between Australia and New Zealand. But here's an interesting thing. Well, I got into Harinam Sankirtan, and the sort of the seed for that was about a month after I joined, Indra Maharaj came and Sri Prahlad came, and they came to New Zealand and they did a tour. So I was just back to Graham, and I just went on this tour. I didn't even have a dhoti. I wasn't shaved up, and I just got really attracted to the musical presentation of chanting Hare Krishna. And after they left, I went to a shop and bought an accordion and I started practicing how to play the accordion. And I gradually got into that same thing. And then a few years later, I started going to the Polish tour with Indra Maharaj. And I was kind of glad to have this opportunity because at the temple, at that time, I was in Sydney. And it was kind of, you were basically collecting money to keep the temple going and do preaching. And it was kind of tough. So I wanted something more kind of enjoyable, like festivals. So, and there was more Harinam involved. So I kind of got involved with Indra Raj through the Harinam festivals. And and at that time, well, during that period, I started listening to lectures by Hridayananda Maharaj, and I was very attracted to his kind of his his style, his presentation, and I liked his kind of his intelligence attracted me. So then I then got approval from Indra Maharaj to get initiation from Hridayananda Maharaj, and then yeah, that's how I got initiated.
The rest is history, so they say.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you mentioned Harinams or your love for Harinams because whenever I think of you, I always think of Harinams, and I'm sure that most people listening or watching will also say exactly the same. Govinda's like the Harinamacharya, everyone knows Govinda for Harinams and chanting in the streets. So let's talk a bit about that, or let's talk a lot about that because it's what you're known for, and you've told us is what you love. So you're well known for kirtans, events, festivals. What is it about chanting in the streets that appeals to you so much, and why do you do it?
I think the reason I got into chanting was actually by default. I was such a lousy book distributor. I felt really out of place. Now, if you go back to the mid 1990s, the movement was still very much three things, basically: prasad distribution, book distribution, and Harinam Sankirtan. At the time when I joined, it's like when there was a Harinam Sankirtan event, it was like the whole temple would just go out. Everyone would go, the managers would go, everyone would go. And it was just like basically the whole temple would go out for the Harinam. So at that time, if you weren't good at book distribution, you felt a little bit out of place, you know. So I gravitated towards the Harinam Sankirtan. I felt it's something I can control. You you can control how you play a musical instrument. You can control how you sing. You have some control over it. Whereas book distribution, I was never able to convince a person because free will is such that as much as I would try, I was never very gifted at all. I'm actually ungifted at actually getting people to, you know, take a book and make a donation, etc. And occasionally when it did happen, it was like nice experience, but I wasn't able to progress with that. So I kind of gravitated towards this as like this is just a positive way to affect a lot of people. And I just got more and more into it. It's it's also about how I approached it. What I've noticed over the years, like I'm in a fortunate position living in the London area because there are so many Harinam groups. I can think of about four or five that I would regularly, not every week, but regularly go on Harinam with. And what I've noticed is people have a certain taste for, oh, I want to do Harinam with that group. I don't like that group, or I like, and I'm not like that. I kind of consider myself fortunate in the sense that I like all Harinam groups. If I see any group going out in Harinam, I'm like, it's amazing. And even if they're not ISKCON, I see some Harinam. Sometimes in London, you see Gaudiya Mat groups, you'll see Bliss, London Bliss. And then when the two groups come together, it's just like total bliss because when people are out in Harinam, they don't, all the kind of institutional kind of competition, it kind of goes to the background and everyone just joins and chants Hare Krishna. So I think, personally speaking, I think one of the problems some people have is they're very sensitive about what they like and what they don't like in Harinam. And I think that's something to be overcome. And a part of it is also the way that the Harinam is, over the years, Harinam has kind of changed how it's perceived. It used to be this is core service that we should always do regularly. Now it's kind of like if you've got free time, you can go on a Harinam. It's kind of like it's little extra. And I've noticed with my friends, we're kind of, I would call us old school in the sense that we want to tell people, no, you shouldn't see Harinam as something that you do when your service, when you have free time. Is you can make it your service. So some people, they say to us, I really want to come out in Harinam, but I've got service. And we reply, well, Harinam is service. It's like, so in a sense, there's a, like, let's rank services. If I were to rank services according to Prabhupada standards, I would say Prabhupada gave most importance to book distribution, second most important to Harinam Sankirtan, and the third most important to prasad distribution. Now, in the current Hare Krishna movement, a lot of people are very active in service, and it's back to yoga, but they won't do any of those three things. There's still a lot of other things to do. I personally think these still they're just more powerful. I prefer them in the sense that they actually change people more than some of the other services. But they're all important services, if you know what I mean. So I'm kind of disappointed in the sense that Harinam is not kind of given the status that it necessarily that it deserves. But
Mm.
in the same sense, I'm not crying about it because I'm living in London where there's a lot of Harinams going on anyway. It's one of the Harinam kind of capitals of the world, outside of India, definitely. So
Mm.
yeah,
And so yeah, I'd agree with you. And just to be fair and balanced, I think what you've talked about is that Harinam not being prioritized that much anymore. I see this in all groups. It's not just an ISKCON thing. Across all groups, it's kind of like, oh, we'll go out on a Saturday morning for an hour because we've got time then. And I remember years ago when I would on the odd occasion come out on Harinam with you, particularly with the Saturday Harinam team from the Manor. And I remember in the mornings, because trying to persuade people to come, come on the Harry and come in the minibus, oh, no, no, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got service at the manor, I've got to clean the toilets, clean the stairs or something. And I remember seeing the look of frustration on your face because you wanted them to come on Harry Nam. And there's me thinking from a broader perspective is that, okay, the manor is wonderful, it's beautiful, it's a fantastic building, it's a great place to be at. But you're preaching to the converted who are already there. We need to keep going out and spreading the word, so to speak. And I'm sure there are I know there are statements of Prabhupada's that he made and reference when the particular temple had a smaller congregation, he would say kind of lower the standards of deity worship and go out and do book distribution and things like that. So there are statements that Prabhupada saying that you need to prioritize the outreach as well.
yeah, I'm thinking of one statement in particular where Prabhupada said, if necessary, stop the deity worship, close the temple, but your main business is to go out and on the streets. So yeah, that's definitely there. And it's interesting, the culture changed. There's one letter where someone asks Prabhupada, is it okay to distribute books and not do Harinam Sankirtan? And I find that question is interesting because nowadays book distribution is mostly done by itself as a lone activity. But there was a time when the devotees even thought, is it allowed to distribute books with if you're not doing Harinam at the same time? Which is interesting how that kind of has happened. I'm not one of these people. I used to be one of these people that I would dig up all the quotes and basically try and shove Harinam down people's throats in a positive way. But I noticed it didn't work. But I'm kind of fair. Like, for example, if you look at the quotes on what is the Yuga Dharma, there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, Yuga Dharma, Krishna Nama Prema Pracharana, which means the Yuga Dharma is to preach not just Nam, the name, but also Prema, love. So Prabhupada translates it as to teach. I think it's something like to teach the process of loving Krishna. So I accept that, for example, when people distribute Prabhupada's books, for me, that's the Yuga Dharma because they are spreading the process of Krishna consciousness, which is how to love Krishna. So, because there are different quotes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as to what the Yuga Dharma is. Like, for example, Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtan. That's very clear saying that the Yuga Dharma is Nam Sankirtan, it's congregational chanting. That's very specific. That's something that Harinam is, whereas book distribution isn't. But then there are other quotes, the one I previously mentioned. There's another one,
Mm.
Kali Yugi Yuga Dharma Namara Prachar, which means in the age of Kali, to propagate the name is the Yuga Dharma. So one way to propagate the name, of course, is to distribute Prabhupada's books because the Maha Mantra is all over the books. Every page, every second, third page, the Maha Mantra is there. So I have a broad conception of what the Yuga Dharma is, but also congregational chanting is the Yuga Dharma as well. And for me personally, and a lot of my friends, we get something out of that we don't get from some of the other types of devotional service. And we feel that if people don't get that, they're missing out on something. I mean, I've got some friends, we look at the new Bhakta programs, and they're very nicely developed, but sometimes there's no space for Harinam Sankirtan. And it's like some of the people, they come and they get a taste for Krishna consciousness, they do a course and they go away and they never actually get to the point where they go out in the street. And we feel that by missing out on that, they're not going, they may not be getting a certain higher taste. And it's, you know, those you notice it when you meet devotees that have, say, been on the street and done lots of Harinam or lots of book distribution. There's a certain something they have, and some people that don't have that. And if you don't get that, it's hard to stay in Krishna consciousness seriously for a long time. Now, some people can do it. You get very dedicated pujaris, very dedicated cooks, but some people, if their concept of Krishna consciousness is to read the books and then chant 16 rounds and then do a little puja in their house, and that's it, they may not be able to, for a lifetime, they may not be able to get a juice out of that. Whereas these same people, maybe they're missing something, and everyone's got their own service, what they really think's the best. And for me, festivals is just the best. And going out in Harinam without a festival is the next best for me, you know. So we feel, a lot of us feel that it's important that these activities, if you get really into them, you'll get a higher taste, and it keeps you going for months and months.
Mm, mm. Why do you think within the movement broadly, not just ISKCON, but why do you think in the movement Harinam these days isn't prioritized like it was years ago? Why isn't it a priority for what we do?
Okay, I think there's a number of reasons for that. One is the movement was always very intense. So being a manager is very intense. Now, if you're a manager and you've got managerial responsibilities, it's difficult to go in the front line and preach at the same time. And I think what's happened over the years is the managers have kind of got, well, this is just, I can't sustain this. Therefore, they've decided I'm going to focus on certain managerial stuff, and I'll let other people do the Harinam Sankirtan and the book distribution, etc. Right? And I think what happens is when that happens, people then look at the leaders and go, well, the leaders aren't doing it, therefore I don't need to do it. And more people, they kind of they get into a comfort zone. And I think that's probably what's happened. Another reason that's perhaps a negative reason why it's happened. There's positive reasons why it's happened as well, because preaching has expanded into so many directions that people have become. You can basically preach on social media. You can preach in there's school preaching. I mean, even as Sankirtan, I used to always think to myself, I'll prioritize street chanting and not temple chanting when it comes to events. But then I changed the way I looked at things and decided I'm going to spend more time supporting temple harinams, as in kirtan within the temple rooms, etc. There's a lot of, like, for example, because I live near Bhaktivedanta Manor, that's one of the biggest preaching centers around, and the footfall is just going up exponentially every year. There's so many events at Bhaktivedanta Manor that I'm thinking to myself, people ask me, can you do a kirtan? I'm like, I'll say yes to it, because you're kind of like, it's a different audience. It's like when you go out in the street, you're giving it Krishna consciousness to people who just know nothing about it. Whereas people that come to the temple, they're already somewhere along the path. So as a listener, they're more receptive. And some of these people, they're curious. They're not necessarily committed to Srila Prabhupada. Many of them have not read Prabhupada's books. They're just curious in general about spirituality. And if you give them a big injection of a nice sort of fired up kirtan, it can really change them, you know. So I think part of the reason why street chanting's gone down is because temples have actually gone up. And it's actually, in some ways, it's a positive thing. And it's like we're caught between the temples are now so busy, maybe we have to spend more time just doing Harinam in the temple itself. And so that's another reason why it's probably gone. It's not as, you know, as focused as before. But I'll distinguish between two things. I think overall, there's probably more Harinam now than there was in, say, the 70s. But in the 70s, it was more like a very small group of people were doing, like, say, 8 hours a day. Whereas now it's like a large group of people are doing a few hours a week kind of thing. So it's kind of the number of hours per week you're doing has gone down. Now, in the terms of overall coverage, it doesn't look like that's not a problem. It's not a problem, right? Because there's still a lot of Harinam going on. But what I've noticed is, see, for about 3 years, a group of us, we were doing 8 hours Harinam once a week, every Thursday. And that was just another experience altogether. Because I'll try to explain what happens. If you do, say, a 2 hour Harinam, it's not gonna, you're not under pressure. And so you can kind of enjoy it. But as you do 8 hours, what's going to happen is you're going to reach a point where it's like you want to stop. We did stop. We do say 3 hours, then we'd have a half-hour break, do another 3 hours, have a lunch break, and then do another couple of hours. But what you notice is you get a point where it's tough on the mind, and then you go through that. It's like you go through a dip, and then you come out, and then you're off the mental platform. And when you do 8 hour Harinams and you get these moments where the whole Harinam party is just floating in another world, basically. You when you get that, you realize, oh, 2 hour Harinam is nothing. It's just scratching the surface. You need to go dig. You dig deeper, and it's like so. A lot of people, when it comes to austerity, book distributors, they're very good with austerity because they'll go out and they'll do an 8 hour stint on the street or whatever. But it's not the culture to do that with Harinam. But it used to be the culture. Like
Mm.
Oxford Street, it used to be 4 hours Oxford Street, they 4 hours Harinam, have lunch, another 4 hours. If you do that day in, day out, I mean, what's that going to do to your consciousness? It's going to be an amazing experience.
Mm.
So yeah,
The other thing I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I think the other thing I want to point out is that as well as them being more intense back in the 1970s, it was likely that everyone on the Harinam was wearing saffron, so it was more visual and people would remember it. So I remember I was helping to organize a festival actually in I think it was Bromsgrove about 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was Bromsgrove, and I was invited to go on BBC Radio Birmingham or whatever to talk about this Hare Krishna festival. And the interviewer said to me, "Oh, where are the Hare Krishnas? We don't see you much these days." And I knew what he was referring to. He was referring to back in the 70s and the 80s, and possibly the late 60s, but not so much, is that there was this kind of sea of saffron, of orange men largely, and women as well in Saris, just going around the streets of the UK 8 hours a day doing Harinam. And today, it just visually looks different. So it's people maybe in white or people in trousers, people in a shirt. So I was just thinking that as you were mentioning it in terms of how Harinams have changed over the years. Because I'm sure the Harinams that you go on, they're not a sea of saffron, are they? People are maybe dressed differently. You know, is there more? I mean, it's a bit of a silly question. Are there more people these days just wearing casual Western clothes?
oh definitely, yeah. I mean, I would say we've probably reached the point. I haven't done any maths recently, but I think we've reached the point where it's probably the majority of people are not wearing dhoti or sari. Probably the
Mm,
majority. I would say so. Most
yeah,
of the time, I mean, I remember once one Harinam about a year ago. There was about 10 of us, and I
yeah,
was the only one wearing a dhoti.
yeah,
And at that
yeah,
moment, I thought to myself, I don't want to wear a dhoti. I feel like I'm standing out a bit unusual.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
would have happily just gone in pants and just done it that way.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. The next question is actually a question that pretty much everyone gets. So I don't want you to think it's a loaded question in any
Okay.
way at all. Because we're having a great positive conversation today about the importance of Harinams. But I ask every guest this. What are your thoughts on the current condition, which sounds like a medical thing. What are your thoughts on the current condition of the present day Hare Krishna movement, just generally?
Generally, I'm quite optimistic about it. I'll give you there's a few thought patterns that I disagree with, and there's a few thought patterns that I agree with. Let me explain. I like devotees when they say things aren't as good now as they used to be, if there's some actual substance to that. Because I think as a movement, we should always aspire for the highest. So I like it when people find not that they find faults, they actually identify legitimate weaknesses in our Hare Krishna movement. I like that. But at the same time, how you respond to it, I disagree with how some people respond. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'll give you an example. Temples, take the London area, for example. Now, you've got Soho Temple and you've got Bhaktivedanta Manor, main temples there. A lot of my friends, if they meet someone on the street and they want a new person, they want to introduce them to Krishna consciousness, they will send them to Soho. And their reasoning is they think they're not going to get, if they go to back, they're sent to Bhaktivedanta Manor, they won't get the right experience. They need to have some kind of, and I can understand what they're saying, because at Soho things are a little bit, there's more energy, and it's partly due to location. But there's a sort of real kind of positive Sankirtan energy. And book distributors, they want people to experience that in order to solidify their Krishna consciousness. Now, I don't personally blame Bhaktivedanta Manor for that. The reason being, I notice that when I'm at Soho, I turn into a different person. I get that mood as well. And I've noticed if you got devotees from Soho Temple, they come to Bhaktivedanta Manor, they change. It's a different mood. It's more of a country mood. It's not the same. So I don't blame the people. It's just it's kind of like a location thing, and I feel in some way a center has a certain mood. Now that talking about that mood at Soho, I think that's one of the best in the world for the mood of the Hare Krishnas. So if you want to my opinion of what's the current situation in the Hare Krishna movement, I think we should try and find ways to bring that mood into more places. Another example, some devotees, they feel that the current Hare Krishna movement isn't really inspiring them, and therefore they boycott the temple. I know some devotees like that. They're like, I'm not going to the temple because the mood's not right, wherever it may be, throughout the world. I have a slightly different perspective on that. I look at temples, I see people trying really hard. I see managers generally trying really hard, but they can't do everything. So there may be things missing, but rather than boycott the temple or just go, I'm not interested because they're not doing things properly, why not just go to the temple and just provide what's missing? So for me, I love temples because I don't have to sweep the floor. I don't have to manage all the issues that go on. I don't have to oversee all the deity worship. I mean, I do a little bit of deity worship every week. I'm on a schedule. I do 2 or 4 hours a week, deity worship at Bhaktivedanta Manor. But I'm not responsible for keeping all that going. I'm not responsible for finding the cooks, making sure everyone turns up on time and keeping the whole operation running. And I look at that operation, I go, people are strained. Everyone's doing their little bit. Everyone's strained. So when I see things missing, I don't think that's like a conscious decision that people are making. It's more a case of, well, we're busy doing other stuff and therefore we can't do everything. So I think there's a temple, everything's set up for you. Why don't you go in and provide what's missing? If you think we're not preaching enough to guests, just go to the temple and preach to the guests. If you think there's not enough Harinam Sankirtan going on in the temples, just go to the temple and get a group of people and do it, And that's the way I approach things. It's like, so I think what was your question? Your question was, how do I see the
What are your thought? What are your thoughts on the current condition
yeah,
or the present
yeah,
day Hare Krishna movement in
yeah,
2025? What are your thoughts on it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there room
yeah,
for improvement? Do you want to see more of something, less of something?
yeah.
You know, is the
So yeah,
movement great at something and bad at something else?
yeah. So going back, I think what needs to be injected more in is the preaching and the just the chanting. There needs to be more chanting and preaching in actual centres. Now I'm very fortunate because both Soho and Bhaktivedanta Manor are busy temples. But there's a lot of places in the UK, for example, smaller centres, and it's really hard to get the manpower, etc. So my feeling is, as I said before, if you dislike people, rather than see what's wrong with it, and I know a lot of people do, they see things wrong with it. Just provide what's missing. That's one thing I'd say. Here's another thing I've noticed. Hare Krishna's, it's all about mood is very important. Now I see the Hare Krishnas developing in ways which are not necessarily good or bad. And I'll tell you what I mean. Structurally speaking, there's a lot of the movement's developing in a terms of management. There's more like you get more managerial training. A lot more people who have managerial training are involved in managing ISKCON. You see projects springing up which involve legal dimensions, they involve grants applications. There's so many ways. There's also internally how you deal with disputes. They're getting more and more sophisticated with ISKCON Resolve and the procedures. And there's all this kind of, let's say it's becoming very professional ISKCON. That in itself is a good thing. However, what I've noticed, and I got a real issue with this, you can be very professional, you can have the best procedures, but you have to be a nice person. You have to be very sensitive to people's needs. What I mean by that is I believe everyone has a right to, as long as you're following basic rules, everyone has a right, a God-given right to practice devotional service according to Prabhupada standards. And I've noticed sometimes, unfortunately, when there are disputes, sometimes you can be very professional about how you deal with something, but you're making the wrong decision because you're not actually treating someone nicely. And I think it's really easy to use, how shall we say, be sophisticated as a manager, but then not be nice to someone. I think we have to be very careful because as far as I can see, there's a lot of people have a good experience with this, but a lot of people have a bad experience. Now, actually, if you actually find out why, they've actually, very often, they got actually a very justified reason for having that their experience was bad. It was legitimately speaking, well, let's say, fairly speaking, some people aren't treated nicely. And there's a tendency, if someone's not treated nicely, you have to like then give them a bad name. But well, this person's complaining, just like it's their fault. That way, it solves the problem, rather than actually be more personal and see what's actually the issue here. And because sometimes people, I get kind of upset when I see good quality devotees. Sometimes they end up becoming marginalized, and it's not really their fault. It's just because they don't fit into a certain kind of mold. They maybe see some things differently, and that's a threat. So I think managers have to be very careful. And it's not easy to be a manager. I think you have to be very careful how you deal with individuals. And it's not easy, but I just feel sometimes that we spend so much time trying to bring people in. But once people are there, we're not very careful how we deal with them. And we can lose very good quality devotees because we don't welcome them, because they don't see things the way we see things. So it's a difficult situation, but I've noticed that even though things have developed in terms of, structure, you still have to be a nice person, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Actually, one member from ISKCON Resolve said that to me. He said, you can have the best systems in the world, but the managers have to be nice. They have to actually have the right, let's say you have to have the best interests of people at heart. And if you don't, then you can actually use the system to kind of get rid of someone that you don't like.
Mm.
It's a problem.
Thank you for that. I do appreciate you being honest and sharing your thoughts on it. You did mention then a few times about the importance of attracting new people into the movement, and we all want more people to be enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness and adopt it as a lifestyle. So my next question is, how can we attract more people, particularly Western people, to the path of bhakti?
That's a good question. And this is another example where I think sometimes managers get unfairly criticized for this. I'll give you my perspective. I think there's a large sociological phenomenon at heart here. And what it is, as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I went down to a Nam Hat in the south of England. And there was about 15 people there. And we want to preach, we're a universal religion, we want to preach to everyone. So there was about 15 people there. One person was Indian bodied, and then the rest were Western. I went back 2 years later to do another Nam Hat, the same place. And the second time I went, there was one white body person and then about 14 Indians. And I thought it's a massive change. So I spoke to the organizers and what's happened here. And he kind of said to me, well, look, we've just discovered that, once you bring in once some Indian people come and they bring their friends and it changes the mood but when people are not philosophically fixed up and they're just generally interested in spirituality, they're going to look at that and think that's something ethnic. It's not really for me. They don't connect that this is something for everyone, right? So it kind of, I think it's a sociological thing and nothing else. It's not like Indian people, they stop Westerners coming. But if you're just a spiritual seeker and you're not fixed up, you're not going to think to suddenly join something that you think is Indian. You're looking for something more universal. So, and it's not just, I'll give you another example. A few years ago, so my son, he plays football. So I took him to Enfield. There was a football match. And I thought, well, it's a Sunday. So I said, what am I going to do? I don't want to watch this football match. And there was a church nearby. So I thought, I'm going to go to this church. So I went to the church and there was a Christian service going on. There was about 200 people there. And every single one was Afro-Caribbean except for me. I was the only white person there. And I was thinking, that's a phenomenon. I'm thinking the Christians, they didn't manufacture that. It happens, right? So I see it as like there's certain forces that cause things to happen. And it's not like some people like they will say they blame, they talk about like Hinduization of ISKCON. I'm like, I don't think it's planned. It sort of happens that way. And what I've noticed, if you look at what your question is how to attract people, I've noticed that they have a good system at Soho Temple. They have Studio 108. So what they've basically done is let's create a separate space and you're engineering it in order you're going to get the right people come in and a group, they get some kind of friendship developing. I mean, I went there once to do some kirtan at Studio 108. That's the first time I'd been. I was amazed. I went there. There's a group of young people. They're not like everyone's Indian. Maybe it was a couple of Indian people. There was some Western, some Chinese, etc. A good selection of different demographics. And no one's wearing a dhoti or sari or anything. And then when I started chanting, I didn't know what was going to go on. After a while, they started getting up and the whole room's dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. And I'm like, this is like a Hare Krishna temple, except it's like they're not wearing the Indian clothes or whatever, or Vaishnav clothes, depending on how you see it. No, we're not going to get into that. But what's interesting was you can't do that directly to Soul Temple. They had to create some space to create an environment that you bring people in. And once they're strong, many of these people will end up joining the ashram at Soho. But it seems to me that, and I'm not expert on this, but it seems to me that when you have a temple where there's a lot of Asian people coming, it's hard to actually get people to kind of commit to Krishna consciousness, just the way it is. And as I say, I don't blame anyone for it. It's just a sociological thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about this happening in other places where an ISKCON community which is sizable. It's difficult to do it if it's a small Namahata, but an ISKCON community which is sizable will have Christians use the term services, so they have two services. There's two different things on a Friday night or a Saturday or a Sunday. So you've got people of Indian heritage and Indians coming to one, and people of Caucasian heritage or non-Indian heritage coming to that one, and things are just done differently. So I've heard about this, and so I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I'd make an assumption that a psychologist would say that we resonate with people, or we identify people that look like us, behave like us, and if you hang out with those people, you become like them. So for example, I often use the example of my stepfather, who is a typical English gent. Well, he's not always a gent, but a typical English bloke who loves to drink beer and watch football. He's not interested in anything to do with religion or gurus or spirituality. So if I invited him to a local Hare Krishna meeting and people are all of foreign heritage, he's got some views on that as well, or of foreign heritage, wearing Indian clothes or Vaishnav clothes, there's absolutely no way at all he would even bother to go. But if they're dressed a bit differently and there's a bit of kind of Beatles music playing and George Harrison, he loves George Harrison, then hey, we can talk about that. He might even come along. So yeah, a psychologist would tell you that it's about how you identify with certain people. And I am pleased I haven't been to Soho Street for a long time, but I often do hear good things about it. And Studio 108, it's a great example. Similar to other communities too. Maybe Radhadesh. I have been to Radhadesh as well. Radhadesh seems to be very good in Belgium at reaching out to the local community.
Wales
and
is very
also,
good as well.
yeah,
Garden.
Wales,
They have
Krishna
a
Kumri.
good collection of brahmacharis developing in Cardiff. Recently, there was a brahmachari conference at Bhaktivedanta Manor recently, and many of them were coming from Wales. So they've got a good scene there, you know. I think it's almost like it's ring fenced. Even then, here's another example. You will get a phenomenon. This phenomenon has happened quite a lot. You get a group. I spoke to one of the brahmacharis from Wales. We were discussing. A group of us were discussing, and I pointed out. I said, you have to be careful. If one brahmachari or one or two brahmacharis to get married, it can actually cause the whole thing to change. It's like the kind of cutting edge razor. The Krishna consciousness is like we have to be broad. It's not just for brahmacharis, it's for everyone. But there is something special about having a group of brahmacharis who are very much, and also marriages, you have a group of brahmacharinis, is when they're like really dedicated to distributing Prabhupada's books, they're really focused on the mission, they're not distracted by other things. You get a really high kind of vibe, energy coming off that. And if a few people within that group, they then decide, oh, I'm getting married, it can actually change the whole complexion of the whole thing. So it's always a struggle. Is like you want to keep a certain. Once you get something that's really operating on all cylinders, the energy's there. You want to maintain it, but practically speaking, these people are all have a whole life path ahead of them, and most of them are probably going to get married anyway. But so it's kind of like we're always trying to manufacture ways to keep something protected because it's the material energy will bring everything down, you know. But
Mm.
yeah, it's amazing when you get a group. There's so much effort it goes into cultivating these people, and you get a brahmachari base. It's really fired up, you know.
Mm. Yeah, I did see the photos and videos
Oh,
online
did you?
of the
Yeah.
Brahmachari conference or whatever. Was it called a conference or something?
I think it was, yeah.
A retreat or something? There was certainly a lot of brahmacharis there at the manor. Okay. Final question. Believe it or not, we're towards the final question already. And I often save this question for sannyasis or people that are kind of in senior positions of management and people like you who have been around for a long time. I mean, uh, once upon a time you were 19, and now you're not 19. Time just seems to go very quickly. Before you know it, you've been around for several decades. If Govinda, if you were given 5 minutes to broadcast a live message to the world on every TV and radio station, what would you say?
This is an interesting question. Here's my first thoughts on that. If you were given such a platform, immediately you would think, what can I get away with? I'll give you an example. Just if you give if anyone's sincere and they have faith in Prabhupada, if you give them Prabhupada's books to read for 1 month, they would be able to give very, very, very good instructions that would help the whole world. And you don't have to be a genius to do that because Prabhupada's teachings are so potent and so relevant that they are what society actually needs. Having said that, if you just speak to the world's population, they don't have faith in Prabhupada, they're probably not going to accept it, right? So it's more a question of what would you want to tell them and what do you think you could get away with telling them that would actually be effective? One of the things I would tell them, and I think it's very relevant to the world at the moment, because of globalization, countries are increasingly a melting pot of different religions. And some of those religions are still having the mentality that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. It's positively bad, you know. I mean, there are some kind of moderate Christians in the UK, but many Christians, they will look at me and think this is satanic. This is satanic in effect. This is like you're worshiping idols. This is not actual religion. This is the opposite for religion. You're going to hell, right? Some people will think that way. Now, I like back to Noel Thakur. He made this prediction. He said the future church of the world will be kirtan. So what he's basically saying is all the various churches with their sectarian views, they will fall offside, and there'll be a more broad conception where kirtan will be the world church. So what I would say, my message would be, is glorify God in whatever religious tradition you're comfortable with. because that itself is kirtan. So, for example, when Christians go to church on Sunday, and some of them still do, there's not very many, but that is kirtan. When the people are praying to Allah, that's kirtan. So my mood would be, look, can we look at religion from a more, let's say, scientific perspective, and just basically say, you know, we don't have to take every single scripture as everything's literal. We can look at things, look at the overall message, and see the commonality. And then we go together and we see how that actually benefits people, not just spiritually, but materially. People are a lot happier when they're part of religious communities. So my message would be, let's do kirtan, and it doesn't have to be Hare Krishna mantra kirtan. You can be singing, singing hymns. You can do your prayers to Allah, whatever it is you may be doing, because that is what actually changes the world. We have this, and it's hard to bring this across. For example, karma. Nearly everyone in the world, well, not everyone in the world, but most people in the world who don't have their head in the sand, they know about this law of karma. They may not believe it because it's hard to prove, right? How do you prove cause and effect? We can prove cause and effect with science, modern science, etc. But you can't prove cause and effect when it comes to, oh, in your next life that happens because of this in this previous life. No one's going to prove that. So most people don't believe in karma. But the fact of the matter is, from our perspective, karma is eradicated through kirtan, regardless of whether it's Hare Krishna kirtan or Christian kirtan or whatever it is. So my message would be, bring people together, group people together, practice kirtan. And Prabhupada, I always laugh at what Prabhupada calls the secular state. Now, we consider a secular state means you can just think what you like. If you want to be religious, be religious. If you want to be atheistic, be atheistic. But Prabhupada had a different conception of the secular state. He said the secular state means if you are a Hindu, the government will make sure you're a proper Hindu, you practice properly. If you're a Muslim, you practice properly. You're a Christian. So his idea of the secular state was you can practice any religion you like, but you should practice some religion. You should, this is Dharma. Dharma is to practice religion. So that would be my message. And you would catch a lot of people because if most people, I say most probably, I don't actually know the actual figures, but more people are religious than not religious overall in the world, as far as I can see. There's many countries where it's predominant religious, but even in the so-called secular countries, you still got a large proportion of people being religious. So I think a lot of people would identify with that message. That would be what I would say. But it's hypothetical because no one's going to listen to me.
Well, they might, you never know. And it's a great message, actually. I often don't know what people will say when I ask that question. And I probably wasn't expecting that answer. Yeah.
The World Church of Kirtan, it's a prediction by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And it really resonates with me. I think that's a wonderful prediction.
And it's a nice, people use the term liberal sometimes. It's a bit of an overused term, but it's quite a nice liberal, inclusive answer, I think, that you've given. That actually it doesn't matter which religion you are, chant the holy names of God. Sing in kirtan, and Prabhupada taught that as well. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. If you're a Christian, be a good Christian. So yeah, it's quite a nice inclusive answer. And I remember one particular.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I balance that within my own sangha, the people that I associate with. We want to ultimately attain our swarup in Vrindavan.
Yes.
So there's something, but that's. There's a time and place for that message as well. But yeah, yes. I interrupt. Carry on.
No. I was just going to say there was also a quote from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he was talking about, he was giving a lot of praise to the Salvation Army. He was referring to it as a Sankirtan movement. So, and he also gave quotes and references to being against sectarianism. We should show respect to God in all forms, in all churches, in all sects, and. Yeah,
Bhaktivinoda Thakur recognizes Sanatan Dharma in other forms. And he says, if you may not understand it, but you can see it, and it helps you appreciate your own practices. When you see others' practices, you may not understand their practices. And he says we should recognize, pure religion in whatever form it manifests.
And that's actually a wonderful note to end on. Believe it or not, we've been recording for a whole hour already.
Amazing.
time goes so quick. Sometimes I could talk to people all day.
Before you finish, if I could just
Yeah, please go
do a
ahead.
little plug. I want to do a plug for Harinam. So this is the Acker, right? This is we've tried so many sound systems. This one's probably the best one we have. It has a long lifespan. It doesn't break down, generally speaking. Um, once you've got one, once you recharge it, you can do maybe 6, sometimes even 8 hours Harinam on one charge. So my request is, now that I've got a little platform here, the Narad podcast platform, my request is to to go on Harinam. You don't need to be an expert musician. You can actually even do it clapping your hands. You can do it with a sound system or that without a sound system. The essence is the holy name. That's the spiritual sound. So I find, I've noticed from hearing from other people, a lot of people have been profoundly affected by seeing someone chanting Hare Krishna. And there may even be one person. One person you can people like play the guitar. If you play the guitar and sing Hare Krishna in a public place, you'd be surprised at how profoundly you can affect someone's life. So my request is, if you're not sure whether to go out and Harinam Sankirtan, just go and do it. You can, and if you want to take it to the next level, get one of those little sound systems, and you can broadcast to more people. But even clapping your hands without a cartels, it's all kirtan. It's all because the main thing is the Hare Krishna mantra, and appreciate other people's Harinams. There's different ways to do it. For example, some people, it's very call and response. Their whole goal is to get the public to chant. Like Harinam Ruchi, I love going out with Harinam Ruchi. I don't go out very often, but not everyone likes their style. People would rather just, I want to chant the full mantra all the time. I don't want to break up the mantra. But they will come and they will break up the mantra and get call and response and get people involved. I like both styles. Some people like one style, some people don't like the other style. I think we should appreciate all styles of Harinam, and we could appreciate traditional with call and cartels only. We should appreciate, Prabhupada said you can bring in other instruments. So you can bring in accordions as long as they're played nicely. Prabhupada said you can bring in drums, you can do all sorts of things. And we should appreciate all different moods. So if you want to do a traditional kind of Harinam where it's just call and cartels, because Prabhupada sometimes said that's the way it should be. We shouldn't bring in other instruments. Whatever it may be, we should appreciate all types of kirtan and try and get involved. So that's my hope and just my quest.
Jai.
Because I sometimes get asked, people say, we're doing an event, can you bring a kirtan group? And they just assume that I can somehow find these people to come with me. But it's not always like that. Sometimes I say, well, I'd like to come. Like, for example, just for Janmashtami this year, a London temple, Sikh temple, or Sikh community centre, they've invited the Hare Krishnas to do kirtan.
Mm.
Now, the temple management at Bangladesh Manor, said they're too busy preparing for Janmashtami. So they asked me, can you do something with this? So I've basically advertised it, and I can't find a Madanga player. I want to go to this event. They're inviting us, and we can go. So it's like, it's great to do kirtan, especially when you're invited, because then you're appreciated. But it's not always possible. I can't wave a magic wand and grab people. So it's kind of like people assume that the kirtan, you can just get a group of people together. It's that easy. It's not so easy at all. So that's why I like to encourage people. If more people get involved with kirtan, then there's more people, we can actually do more events. Like Harry, we do school events as well. The Vanti schools, they're wonderful. People, there's another thing you talked about. I talked about how people don't see things properly. I'm running over. I hope you have to go soon, right?
Have to go soon. It's okay. Carry
I
on.
I love I love the Avanti schools. They invite us, several times a year to go and do kirtan events, and you get all the school children. They all just dance and chant Hare Krishna because they know nothing. They're too young to have an opinion not to do it. So we just give them a fun time, whether it's a Ratha Yatra or some other kirtan event. And a lot of people, they look at the Avanti schools and they think, oh, this is Hinduism, but it's not actually Hinduism. What it is you're preaching it's predominantly Hindu community based for sure. But if you look at the schools, the actual what they're trying to do, most schools they have a few teachers who are fixed up Vaishnavas who understand the philosophy, and they're carrying the spiritual side of the school. And the other teachers, they're favorable. Some of them are like, it's not even their religion, but they respect it and they take part in chanting of Hare Krishna. And in the parents, many of the parents, a lot of the parents most of the parents are from Indian community, but many of them are meat eaters. It's like, so you're not seeing a high standard. So some people look at that and go, oh, that's Maya, that's low. but it's not. You have to see what they're trying to achieve. And if they're welcoming Vaishnavas to come in and preach and to do kirtan and to give classes, etc., they welcome that, and that kind of nourishes them. So I look at it from as like it's a win-win because the school the teachers they actually are doing bhakti yoga even if they're not actually practicing Hare Krishnas. And then the parents, many of them, their standards go up, and the children get a nice base as well. So it's kind of everyone benefits, and it's just like, and the government are paying for it. So it's like, for me, the Hare Krishna movement is spreading in terms of structure, and all we have to do is have enough people to actually inject the teaching, the philosophy, um, providing the prasadam, doing the kirtan, and we can provide that spiritual core that's required to fill those structures. So I think I'm really positive about how things are all developing.
Good, good.
So yeah,
We need enough people who are willing to be spiritual activists
yes.
to commit several hours time every week to go out. Not even several hours, but some time every week to go out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe in the future, Govinda, we'll do a part two.
Oh yes, I'd
Because
love
I think
to.
you and I could talk forever about these things. And
I think you had, didn't you have back to doing part two, was he?
I've had out of 179 guests, 5 people have done two.
Yeah. I saw
Uh,
back to you on your podcast. I'll give an example. Back to you is wonderful. You know, when I used to live in Edinburgh, it was hard to get a Harinam party together because it's a small community. And back to used to come out with me. And then I would go to the Les Mahego and do some gardening. And he later on told me, he said, I wasn't really into Harinam, but because you wanted to do it, I went along with it. And I was really grateful because I thought he kind of went out his way to facilitate my desire to do Harinam Sankirtan. And so I would then reciprocate by going to the garden and doing some work at Les Mahego Garden. Yeah. So it's great. We have to pull together, especially when it comes to Harinam, because there's not so
I
many people.
agree. I agree. We should work together more. Okay, Govinda. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone at home. You just stay there on your
Yeah.
sofa. Don't go anywhere. But
Thank you.
just
I've really appreciated the podcast. I think you're bringing up some good topics, and I hope you reach 1,000 podcasts.
well, yeah, I'll have to obviously live a lot longer. I mean, we're going to reach 200 by October.
Very
So
good.
yeah, that's possible. 800 over the next decade.
Who
Yeah,
knows?
I'm sure you'll make a return. So just stay on the line, Govinda. It's like a chat show, isn't it? Stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. So I'm incredibly grateful to Govinda Prabhu for being the 179th guest on the Hare Krishna Project podcast. I'm sorry that it's taken 179 guests to get to him, but I'm grateful to him for giving up his time. He's always busy, engaged in service. Whenever I think of Govinda, he's always doing something. And if he isn't, he'll make sure he is busy doing something, which is, Harinam, Hare Krishna Festival, Kirtan, whatever. So just to remind everyone at home or wherever you watch these podcasts, if you are watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching this on Facebook and you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. Those are the two ways you can watch this podcast. And whenever I say that, the number of subscribers and likes and followers does go up. So it means that you're listening, which is great. So 179 is done and dusted. Tune in next week to see who guest 180 will be. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care. Hare Krishna.